Welcome to the Veteran Impact Show. We are all about Charlie Mike, the motto of the show, which is continue the mission. And there is no group in America that is doing that more and taking the lead more than our veterans do. And this is a very special show. I am a huge proponent of our Veteran Treatment Court program. We're going to hear from Her Honor Judge Collins, who serves Dallas County, which is one of the busiest Veteran Treatment Court programs in the state, and we're excited. So we'll kick this off in just a couple minutes. Until then, we're going to vamp a little, and we're going to have some fun. And that other smiling face you see is my good friend, fellow Marine, Scott Smith, whose legacy of Charlie Mike is long and significant, my friend.
You know, I was reminded of that, Chuck, at conference. For the longest time, I've never felt that I had the compelling story to tell, like so many other people that you've had on your show and that we all know very, very well. But I'm reminded at a conference, the number of people who come up to me, because I've been doing this for the last 10 or 12 years, and thank me. So you're right. I guess I'm known far and wide.
Well, you were my instructor with Ginger Simonson, Lieutenant Colonel Simonson, for the Military Peer Network. And that was really my first introduction to a lot of this, Scott, and that was just amazing. And then Judge Collins, the first time I met you was with a deal for Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson. And I tell you what, your involvement in the community has just been fantastic. We're very, very appreciative of that, especially in an area with dealing with veterans with problems, because I did that as well at one time. That is so important to get those guys back on their feet.
Absolutely. One of the things I was going to mention, I'm pretty sure, Your Honor, you know Ken Waterston, who runs Homeless Veteran Services of Dallas and the Veteran Resource Center.
I think I've run across them a couple times over there.
So one of the things, and I needed, and I apologize, one of the things I need to do is be a little better prepared so that Diane can post the link onto our Facebook page, especially as recording, but we will put it on our Facebook page. He has partnered with Dallas County Community College to create at the Veteran Resource Center, which is down by the Dallas VA, a welding program. So someone will leave the program after 9 weeks. They will have a certified skill. They will also have a forklift driver's license. And it gives these people an opportunity to immediately go to work with a viable skill set.
Across America, you're listening to the Veterans Impact Show, featuring stories of veterans who continue the mission in their communities with honor, courage, and commitment. Brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation and the Texas Veterans Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome aboard. You're listening to the Veterans Impact Show. I'm Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran, Vietnam Extension Branch. Joining me, the one and only, the Marine, who beats the air into submission with those terrible things called helicopters. Hey, Chuck Wright, welcome aboard, buddy.
Good morning. It's always a question how you're going to introduce me.
I know. I like to keep you guessing. I got to tell you though, Chuck, we talked about this for a long time. We have two really great friends joining us. They're showing up on Facebook. I'd like to introduce the Honorable Judge Dominique Collins. She is the head of the Dallas County Criminal Court number 4 and the head of Dallas County's Veterans Impact Court. Well, thank you.
Veterans Court?
The Veterans Court. Okay, all right, I'll take another sip of my...
See, I'm telling you, man, you got to go back to coffee.
I got to go back to coffee.
So we always give our morning plug for Dunkin' Donuts, even though they're not sponsoring the show. I just don't understand that.
And Judge Collins, welcome aboard.
Welcome.
And your able assistant, a very old and dear friend of ours, Scott Smith, U.S. Marine, Vietnam Extension Branch as well. Welcome aboard, guys. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having us.
I think one of the things, Chuck, you mentioned earlier, let's start off with what is the Veterans Court? Please tell us a little bit, Judge Collins, what it is and what it does so our audience knows.
All right, so the Dallas County Veterans Treatment Court, we have justice-involved veterans, and how they become justice-involved is they commit a crime. So let's say, for instance, let's say one of my Desert Storm buddies takes a wild walk about town, drinks too much, drives erratically, gets stopped by the police, he's over the limit, and so that person would apply to Veterans Court. We'd look at their veteran status, their status of their discharge, and if we can logically tie the offense to their military service. And on that one, easily, it could possibly be the military drinking culture or some sort of PTSD, or, there's lots and lots of ways to tie them together. If that person has a tie and we figure we can treat them and they're amenable to treatment, because that's the thing, is a treatment court, you have to be amenable to treatment. So we take them into the court, we give them a recipe card, for lack of a better word, and that is such an individual thing. It's, John Brown needs help with alcohol because of PTSD, military drinking culture, needs help with a job, all kinds of things, maybe even some sort of mental issues like bipolar or just anything. And they agree to the treatment. We take them into our court. We have them come to court once a week. That's every Thursday at 2:00. Ordinarily, in a non-COVID environment, our probation officers visit them at their homes, check out their environment, make sure it's safe, just address any issues that need addressing. And then they just come to court and deal with us. They have to talk to Scott or one of the other mentors twice a week. And we tell them the contact has to be significant, not like, hello, I woke up today, significant contact. And they also engage in, if it's alcohol, they're going to go to treatment for that, inpatient or outpatient, or maybe even both as an extension and a booster. And then we take them to the program, and they finally, when the issues have been addressed, all the recipe ingredients have been checked off, then we give them a 90-day stability period. That means the police don't come to your house anymore, you're not drinking or drugging, all your tests are clean, and then they hang out 90 days, stability, and then they graduate. And in our case, we give them a dismissal and expunction.
Wow.
And the thing that's significantly different about our program than other counties, I think, is that we're truly a diversion court. We never have them plead guilty. A lot of courts, you have to pay money and plead guilty, and then they back you out of that plea and get your case dismissed and expunged. But in my opinion, we wear warrior caps. We raise our hand to support and defend and even die for our country, right? So I don't want you raising your other hand saying, yeah, now I'm a guilty criminal. I don't want that switch to ever get turned. So they don't plead guilty to anything with us.
That's very important, because there's a lot of things like, for instance, getting your pilot's license or your job resumes or things like that say, have you ever been convicted, or have you ever been, put in this situation? Have you ever done this? And the use have just made it clear that you don't have to put that on your job application. You don't have to put that on your license application. I think that goes for CDLs too, probably. So that's huge, Judge Collins. That's really important, because it enables somebody to maybe change their life and get a job or keep their job.
Right. That's a big, big, big deal for us, being able to walk around, it kind of restores their grandeur. You know what I mean?
So I know, and I think it's important to talk about what you are doing, and I'm going to try to embarrass the other veteran treatment courts, because I don't think all of them make expunction an automatic part of the process like y'all do. And I think that's incredibly important, that we really are. This is very much a true second chance program, and I'll ask you a question a little later in the show, because I have talked to this with some of our House reps, and I don't know if they're paying enough attention, but I want to go ahead and we're going to cut right to the chase. One of the things that floored me, and I remember Scott telling me this for the first time, and it has been years. I've been proud to have known Scott for a lot of years. Would you talk a little bit about the average recidivism rate of most of these crimes versus the veteran treatment court recidivism rate?
All right. Well, with other people that aren't involved in a diversion court, but specifically with the veterans, we have a very low recidivism rate. It used to be about 2%, but I think during COVID, people are having more of a struggle with different things. So it's probably gotten up to maybe about 4 or 5 now, but we're working on that. I think that is going to involve more contact with us and maybe keeping the people longer and just more hands-on, because during COVID, we don't have as many visits as we'd like to. We're getting there. But other people, I want to say there's probably about a 50 or 60% recidivism rate. So they're not making an effort to teach them. They're not a part of a community.
Right.
I think the veterans have muscle memory. We know how to act right. We know how to be good. If we couldn't get through whatever basic and, just be a military person and earn your veteran status. So we're just trying to snap back the muscle with the veterans. Other people may not have been taught the things that we've been taught. So we're definitely an easier population to work with, sort of.
We certainly do have advantages, and we've talked about that on the show a lot with be it veterans go out of business, veteran entrepreneurs go out of business at a lower rate. But to go from a 50% recidivism rate for most offenders down to a 5% rate is staggering. And the reason I bring that up is I'd like our listeners to think about the cost of incarcerating somebody in the state. If you've got somebody, oh, there we go. I'm not looking in the right place. Sorry about that. We're still trying to get used to our new studio. So think about this. You have somebody who is in jail. That means they're not a productive member of society. They're not earning a living wage, and they're not paying taxes on that, because when we go to the store, we pay state income tax. We are considered productive members of society. But if you're in jail, not only does the state have to spend money for that, but you're now not a productive member of society. And it's not hard to make that logical inference to what that does to their families. I'm not 100% sure how to say it. Scott, I think you know where I'm trying to go with this. Kind of jump in and talk about why this is so important. And we get it, especially for our veterans. They've done more, they deserve more, but there are so many applications to this across the state that are positive.
I would agree. And when you begin talking about families, having grown up in a military family myself, I think the family members are every bit as affected by what the veteran has done, the way the veteran lives. Maybe even more so than the veteran themselves. So yeah, it's an issue that goes through generations, quite frankly.
Well, I grew up in a military type family. I'm third generation Navy, but I will tell you that going into the Navy was the best thing that ever happened to me, going through boot camp, but it changed me. And when I came out, I was changed. Now, a lot of men and women got changed, not so much for the best. So what I have seen is a lot of self-medication, drugs and alcohol and other behaviors. And so what you're doing is you're going back to focus on and cure the underlying problem. Alcoholism isn't the problem. You mentioned the word bipolar or PTS or TBIs or other things. Mm-hmm. And if you cure the underlying problem, then you're going to stop the overall problem, because they won't do the self-medication. So that's why your recidivism rate is so low. But better than that, everyone I've known that's been through the Veterans Court becomes an outspoken standard for that court and being able to help that court. And I think that's important, because it also, now I happen to have a family member who's in the alcohol treatment court. There are other treatment courts that go along with this. So tell us a little bit more about that, please.
About the other treatment courts?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, they've got one for pretty much every special issue that needs to be addressed. Like I said, we have prostitution diversion court, where we teach those ladies how to live. When they graduate from the prostitution court, it's called the Star Court. Sometimes it's the first time they've ever worn a graduation robe, and it's really, really cool to watch how filled with pride they are. Of course, we have DWI court to help those folks learn to manage their illness, for lack of a better way to put that. We've got drug courts, of course. We have gang courts. Let me think, what else is there? There are family courts, because sometimes there are families that they just get in trouble.
Yeah.
In my court, I actually have a mother and a daughter, and I really, really enjoy spending time with them, making sure that they both, when the mother got better, the daughter got better. It's just holding themselves, each of them, accountable. I don't have a family court, but that's what they do. This is just a weird accidental thing. Thinking, what other kind of courts do we have? There are many, dual diagnosis for people who are dealing with a mental illness as well as a drug or alcohol addiction. We've got everything that needs to be addressed and can be addressed. We're doing that, especially in Dallas County.
I think that's so important because I've also had experience with people who have been in the juvenile justice system as well as the Texas correctional system. In the juvenile justice system, the recidivism rate is 87%. 87% end up in the adult prison system. And I really don't know if basically what they're going through, they're getting the same kind of treatment. But I do know in the adult prison system, I've had several people that I've talked to. It's amazing. They just seem to keep going back, getting in problems, doing the same things over and over again, where with the Veterans Treatment Court, you're absolutely trying to eradicate the underlying causes or change the underlying causes. And that's important. It's not about saying, no, poo-poo, don't do this again. It's about, okay, we understand you got this problem. Let's address the problem.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest things that I actually see. Like when I have the veterans graduate from the program, I see them in the veterans community. I bump into them all the time. It's very cool. They're not coming back in my jail. They're in my community. They're in my life.
I see that as well. Many that I counseled up in Denton, and all of a sudden, man, they're shining stars. They're almost as good as Scott Smith. I mean, it's amazing.
You know, it's amazing how many of these participants go on to get master's degrees and doctor degrees, and I think as a result of their time in the program, become counselors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a graduate from up in Denton who now works for the Republican Party in the state of Texas. all kinds of good results.
I think that's really, really incredible, and it's important. So we're going to be going to a break in just a minute, and I want to come back just for our audience that's joining us and reintroduce the Honorable Judge Dominic Collins. She's head of the Criminal Court number 4 in Dallas County. She is head of the Veterans Court in Dallas County. And Judge Collins, you also handle cases from other counties as well, correct?
Right. Sometimes if the person lives in Dallas, but their offense is in another place, we will do a courtesy supervision. So they go through our program, let the other county know they've successfully completed everything, get rid of their case, if that's what you do.
All right, and we've got the great Scott Smith, who is the Military Peer of the Year, in my opinion, and one of the finest guys. Joining me, Chuck Wright, my great friend.
We love
for a long
hyperbole
time
on the show.
Yeah. So we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners. You're listening to the Veterans Impact Show, brought to you by Fairway and brought to you by Chuck's Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We'll be right back.
Everyone has coffee but me.
We apologize. We could not find coffee delivery service.
I can't drink the caffeine and I can't take the acid. So this Buy Boost gets me where I need to be without niacin and without getting the heebie-jeebies.
Okay, realize she can't see you if you look that way. You've got to look at the camera.
Okay. Does that help?
He's old, and technology is difficult for him.
Okay.
I know you've got
Marine?
something over there.
Marine, how much younger are you than he? 3 years?
Decade. But thanks, you just got taken off the Christmas list.
I was never on your Christmas list.
Oh, yeah, you were. You were always in our hearts. You were always in our hearts.
No one can ask for more than that, can they?
And I think the only reason you're not on the Christmas list, although I don't think we've really done one the last 2 years, I don't think I have your home address. So there.
That's probably intentional on my part.
It's entirely possible. That is entirely possible. Needless to say, for those that are kind of wondering about our back and forth, Scott and I have been friends for a long time. You've obviously never been around Marines, because if we weren't giving you a hard time, it means we don't love you.
It means you don't matter.
You do not matter if we're being polite.
And I got to tell you, I went to an MOAA dinner up in Denton, and the guy got up and asked if there were any Marines in the audience, and there were none. And boy, he had a field day with that one. And Judge
I'll tell you a
Collins,
quick story.
you were Air Force, as I understand from your resume.
Yes, 12 years Air Force active duty, to include 7 months in the Gulf War.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And we're working on some technical things on this end, trying to figure
Yeah,
out
so
our
just bear with
Facebook
us.
connection.
So, Jim, you talk about Marine. Down in Corpus, I had an Army judge walk up to me while we were down there. And we got to talking. She said she was Army, and I said, "I'm sorry." The next words out of her mouth were, "You must be a Marine." Only Marine could get away with that.
Indeed, indeed.
Well-
Very appropriate. Now, quick question. Was she a current JAG officer, or was she a former Army who was a judge somewhere else?
Judge, she was in your, went to school with you. Do you know the answer to that?
Oh, Grace.
Yes.
She was in the Air Force, and then she got out like me. I think she retired, and then she
Okay.
came to law school. I left Air Force to go to law school.
So I'll share this story right quick. I was an aviator, and one of the programs they have is a 3-week TAD OSO officer selection office, but it was basically recruiting potential officers. And I went down to Austin, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for JAG officers." And the JAG officers that I knew in the Marine Corps were hysterical, and they were great people and great Marines. But I wound up going over to the University of Texas Law School and hanging out in the library, and got to meet a bunch of guys. And the sales pitch was, the Marine Corps will pay for your law school,
All right,
And-
guys, we're 30 seconds out.
and they're also going to let you actually practice law pretty much day one. So you don't have to spend 3 to 5 years clerking before you see the inside of a courtroom. And wound up picking up a couple of them. It was great.
All right.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show.
It's
Thanks
right
to
here.
our great
Can't miss
sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation and the Texas Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Now, let's continue this conversation.
Welcome back. This is Jim Blythe with Chuck Wright. We have two very, very special people. They're special because we know Scott for a long time. Scott Smith, Military Peer Network, also involved with the Dallas County Justice Veterans Court, and I think that's one of the most amazing things you've ever done. And joining us, the Honorable Judge Dominic Collins, who's head of the Dallas County Veterans Court. Welcome back, and this is a great conversation today. We've told everybody about the Veterans Court and what it does. Judge Collins, approximately how many people, since you've been in your position, do you have an idea how many people have been through the court?
Gosh, probably since I've been there, maybe, I think Janie says she's done 200 and something expunctions.
I think that's about right. I was going to say 300.
Maybe
Wow.
it's probably that now.
And you changed those people's lives. And do you follow up with them over time to see where they are and how they're doing? Because we were talking earlier about how many we've had experience with who return back in, basically get themselves back on track and become very involved in not only veterans activities but community activities.
Well, sometimes we have them come back and volunteer as mentors after a period of stability. We're trying to figure out what's going to be our standard with that as far as how long they have to stay away and be good. But usually they hit me up on Facebook because their cases are dismissed and expunged, and there's no problem with that. So they hit me up on Facebook, or they'll tell me, look at my family, you know, they'll check in with me, send me a message. They'll come in sometimes. I run into them in the community. We have one very special one did you guys watch the NFL draft this year?
Yes.
Last year? Okay, well, you saw the number, I think it was number 12. She made the next Dallas Cowboy, Micah Parsons. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, she was a veteran that had come through our program, and I'm only saying
Yes.
that because she's very out and proud about it. Normally, we don't mention their names or whatever, but she's very out and proud about it. And, you know, when we met her, she was, when they met her, she was there before me. She was in a bad place, and she just was not happy about life and was going through so much. You know, I sometimes say she was like that movie Leaving Las Vegas, you know, not actively doing things to harm herself, but just, you know, I don't care if I wake up.
Right.
And so she's been through so much. She got her master's, and she just recently became a doctor. She's a PhD now.
That is amazing. It was such an amazing story. I'm a bit of a draft nerd. I'll actually spend about 20 minutes a day running my own simulated mock drafts, just for one team. I don't do it for the whole league. I'm not that bad of a nerd, but I remember that, and that was so incredible. I'm going to see if we can find that clip to put it up for our viewers. It'll be on our Facebook page this weekend. But that is an incredible story, and I do remember that, and I was so proud of that. And I'll use the royal we when I talk about veteran treatment courts, because I am so proud of this program. Scott was working with the Denton Veteran Treatment Court until you stole him away to come down to Dallas. But he was also working with the Military Veteran Peer-to-Peer Network, which is another incredible program. I am very much an advocate and an ambassador for what Texas does. So love that story. That is really cool. So you're talking about, even at a 5% recidivism rate and 200 people, that's 190 people whose lives didn't go south and didn't go down the tube. And excellent mention of, and I'll talk about it real quick, if you want a really depressing movie, it is Leaving Las Vegas. It was a great performance by Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue, but it is not for the faint of heart. It is a true look at that dark side, if you will, of alcohol abuse, of depression, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so from me, thank you very much. And I'd like to ask both of you, give us a quick resume, and realize we apologize. We're kind of dealing with two different audiences. We've kind of talked about it once, but we did it for one audience. For the other audience, give us your Air Force background and how you got into the law and thus into being a judge.
All right. Well, I've always wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 6 years old. I, of course, went to undergrad at UT, and then I just got so sick of that. My mom bossing me around, telling me what to do. And so I lost my mind the first time. So I quit school and joined the Air Force active duty. And so that was maybe in 1989. And literally the very next year, I went to the Gulf War. Saddam invaded Kuwait on the 4th of August. They said, you got 8 days to get out of there.
Wow.
On the 9th day, I was on a C-130 going to Saudi Arabia. So I was there for 7 months and 6 days, lots of bombs and all those kinds of things. And then got back, went to Korea, and then spent 7.5 years at Luke Air Force Base, to include being the nighttime bartender at the Officers Club. And then I just kept waiting to go to law school. There's no right time. There's no perfect moment. The stars never line up. You got to line them up. So I, again, lost my mind, and I quit my job, sold my house, and went to law school. Took the 4-year-old baby, we went to law school. And so my intention was to literally finish that and go back in and be a JAG. But 9/11 happened my second week of law school. And the first time I went to a war, just who knows when I'm going to come back. I didn't have a kid. This time I have a little 4-year-old kid, and I said, I'm done. So the military became, it was not my option anymore. Mm-hmm. So the first job I got was being a DA in Dallas. I got a call that says, hey, can you come over here and interview for this position? And I said, well, I didn't apply for it. They said, you can do it when you get here. We heard something about you.
Oh, excellent.
Well, I'll tell you what, Judge Collins, we're going to have to take a break to hear from all of our partners. When we come back, let's tell more of that story about how you got started. A little girl that's 6 years old who wanted to be a lawyer, and you got in the Air Force. Thank you for being
Scott,
on board.
We're gonna do the Marine story too.
You bet. We'll be right back after these words from all of our partners. Thank you for being part of the Veterans Impact Show.
The Marine story will be a Reader's Digest version, I promise.
And let's make sure we clean that one up a little bit.
Okay, we can end up, technically I'm talking to Nathaniel, we can edit that a little bit and get that back, but I did not want to interrupt that story. I thought that was so fantastic, Judge Collins, and I apologize for having to interrupt you. We're trying to hold with a radio clock because of the commercials, because this is being replayed. So this will be replayed in Dallas next weekend.
Oh,
Next weekend?
So you'll get to hear yourself on the air again if you choose. And we will send you the YouTube, and we will send you the audio file if you choose to put that on your website. Or
Sure.
if you, I didn't find. I saw you on Facebook, but I didn't see a specific website for the Veterans Court. I didn't know if you had one or not. If you do, let's give that out.
Not yet. We're going to build it.
Okay.
It's going to be something the entire community can use too. The veterans will be able to log in and do their business, but other regular people, they can go in, order 214, start their VA package, just do so many things with this website. It's going to be awesome.
I think that's fantastic. And if there are expenses to the Veterans Treatment Court, there's got to be, okay? How do you fund those? Are those funded through the county, or are they funded, Chuck? How do they get funded?
I don't know.
Can you explain that? So when we come
Well,
back?
Sure.
But for right now, with our Facebook, how do they get funded?
So we've got some grants we get from different places, and then we get some money from the Cowboys also. The Dallas
cool.
Cowboys have become very interested in us, and they've given us a total of $45,000. I don't know if you watched the football game the day after Christmas, so 26th December, where they played the Washington team. And they brought myself and another guy in the community onto the field at halftime, and they gave us these giant checks. I mean, they're really giant.
Unfortunately, the halftime presentations are usually not shown. I don't know if that one was, or maybe they came back to it. It may not have been. So unfortunately, when you're watching an NFL game, a lot of times you don't get to see that, and I hate that. But I'm still stuck. I'm sorry. It was such a great story about the young lady who came out during the NFL draft. And I immediately think of Scott, and we'll talk about Scott's background and how he got into this when we come back and go for our radio audience. We have two audiences.
All right, we're about a minute out. So when we come back, let's really. Okay. All right.
Yeah, we've already heard from
my producer is my wife. By the way, this is our anniversary.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. Thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation and the Texas Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Now, let's continue this conversation.
Hey, welcome back to the Veteran Impact Show. I want to take a personal minute. My co-host and our assistant producer, we'll call her that, we'll give her an actual title. It is their 11th anniversary, so big time shout out to these newlyweds that are that have become really good friends of ours. So, okay, silliness is over. A very serious topic with a couple of great guests. We are talking about Veteran Treatment Court, and we left this off. Judge Collins was talking about her background, and you went to St. Mary's, is that correct?
I did. St. Mary's Law School in San Antonio. I love that city because it's such a military city.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm an Air Force brat. I graduated from Randolph, and I will throw out there, it's my only claim to fame, I was the first Marine officer commissioned from the University of Texas at San Antonio. So there we go. But we are also joined by Scott Smith, who is a Marine, and we wanted to get Scott to talk about, because when I met him, he was working with the Denton Veteran Treatment Court, and he was also working with the Military Veteran Peer-to-Peer Network. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about your journey. I know you're a very humble person. I've known you for a long time, but you actually have an amazing story. You've gone through your own bumps and bruises, but now you are doing so much with this concept of Charlie Mike, continuing the mission. Talk about that a little bit. We're going to get you to brag about yourself a little.
I mentioned earlier that I come from a military family. My father was a career naval aviator. My mother was a wave when my parents met in Pensacola in the end of World War II. My brother's a Naval Academy graduate, class of 74. And I was the only smart one in the family and went Marine Corps.
Hoorah! Outstanding.
I went Marine Corps for two reasons. One, they've got some darn good looking dress uniforms. And two, I thought it was the toughest there was.
If you're going to be a
So
bear,
I graduated
you
from
may as
boot
well be a
camp
grizzly.
wearing a set of dress blues as platoon honor man, never looked over my shoulder.
Outstanding.
Did a tour in Vietnam, came home, spent 6 months at Bethesda Naval, then for whatever reason was selected for Marine Embassy School and served at the American embassies in Kingston, Jamaica, La Paz, Bolivia. I had applied for Naval Academy Prep School in Bainbridge, Maryland, but had an NCOIC who had not taken to me very much because I think I was the only Vietnam veteran on post and wore more ribbons than he did by about fivefold. So I got out of the Marine Corps. My first job was gravedigger at Arlington National Cemetery at the height of the Vietnam War, and we were interring 25 people a day.
Wow.
From there, I went to the federal government, retired from it in 84 or 5, and for the next several years, just kind of kicked around. And it wasn't until much, much later that I realized perhaps I was more infected by the Vietnam War than I was willing to admit. Several jobs, a couple of failed marriages. And then in October of 2010, I believe it was, I attended a seminar at University of North Texas for 2 days. And the organization that put that on was Vets for Vets. During that 2-day seminar, we had group training, there were about 30 of us, and then periodically we would break into smaller groups, 5 or 6 people at a time. And when we were in those smaller groups, we were required to speak uninterrupted for increasing lengths of time. And if you didn't have anything to say, nobody was allowed to say anything until your time was up. We started at 5 minutes and moved all the way up to 60. And lo and behold, at the end of each of those segments, my lips are still flapping. I had more to say than I thought. It was then that I was introduced. It was then I was introduced to Judge Carr and the treatment court in Tarrant County. Mm-hmm. I also met Judge Snipes in Dallas County before Judge Collins took it over. And from there, spent many weeks mentoring some of these young people. There are a total of 10 such programs around the Metroplex, and I'm not sure everybody is aware of that. So I will mention, Tarrant County has 2, Denton County has 1, Judge Roach in Collin County oversees 5 separate counties. It's got the first of its kind regional program. Dallas County with Judge Collins, and the city of Dallas also has a program. And there was a period of time when I was working for the Military Veteran Peer Network, I had my hands in every single one of those programs on a weekly basis.
Wow.
In about 2019, I think it was, Judge. And Chuck, I think you'll remember this because I believe you were sitting on the committee. Mm-hmm. She did a presentation and made the announcement she was going to steal me. And the story she tells is when that came out of her mouth, everybody in Dallas knew about that before she finished her sentence. But the judges brought me aboard, and I advocate for the rest of those programs, but I am 100% Dallas County right now as a peer mentor coordinator.
I think one of the most important things that we touched on earlier, and Scott and Judge Collins, you talked about somewhere between 200 and 300. Scott, you thought it was about 300 have been through Judge Collins's court. You not only have impacted 300 people, but you've impacted their families. So multiply that times 3 or 4. That's an enormous number of people that now have a new life, that now have a new purpose, and that now have a new beginning. I think one of the other things people don't realize, veterans have led the way in this nation since World War I and World War II. The greatest economic boons in this nation came after World War II because of the management styles that were learned in the military. And when I came out, I was changed, and I immediately had an ethic and went after it. I was president of my first company when I was age 30. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about veterans in general and how the positive impacts the community. That's all about what we're talking about. Charlie Mike.
Mike, continue the mission. And it's one of the reasons, because as you both know, and you both have seen this as we think of it as a wave, and sometimes veterans are very high, but unfortunately, officially the global war on terror is over. I promise you that one is never going to end, unfortunately, but it's no longer on the radar. And why it is so important, why this show is here, is to make sure we are highlighting the work that you are doing. And this is the leadership we're talking about. This is down and dirty, if you will. I was very excited to see the other day, we talk about 22 suicides a day. That number's actually down to 17 now. Now, that doesn't mean the work is over by any means. And they're afraid to talk about that because people go, well, we don't have to worry about that anymore. No, we still have to worry about it. That's still a lot of people that are taking their own lives. But this is, to me, extremely interesting. And again, knowing Scott, knowing Judge Garcia, Judge Beadle, Judge Roach, I unfortunately never met Marine Judge Parr over in Tarrant County. I always throw in that Marine part. But this continued leadership, and it will be interesting to see as we go further and further down the road and we have a bigger statistical base, the positive impacts, the stories, and it's kind of where I'm going in my usual long-winded fashion. But and everybody's laughing, and it's like, hey, deal with it. But what these lives have turned into, and so I'd like each of you to share. We've kind of already shared one, but another story about a life that was completely turned around, because we hear this so seldom from our justice system.
I'm thinking.
Scott, I know you've got one.
Yeah, he does.
Not off the top of my head, I don't really.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I remember, Scott, the first time we started broadcasting in 2015, you brought a young man named Michael from the Denton County Veterans Court. Do you remember that young man? He was a young man. I don't remember. I think he was an Army veteran, but he was the first one to go through Judge Garcia's court.
I remember him.
And he went on, I think, to do some really great things after that, get his master's degree or whatever.
Well, let me do a short version of that story. A gentleman by the name of Michael Killam, I think you all know, brought me into this work when he was with MHMR of Tarrant County. And we did a presentation on peer services to a professional business class at UNT. During that presentation, there was a young woman in the front row who raised her hand and said, I've got somebody I think could use your help. And it was her brother, is the young man that you're talking about.
Yes.
He was 2 DUIs on his think in a space of 3 months, squared away young man. And we made a case to, at the time, ADA Forrest Badel rather than Judge Forrest Badel. Presented him to the court, and they took him. We learned at the time he was so squared away, we made several recommendations, things he might do before accepted. And he did every single one of them, had them all completed. So when he went into the program, he entered in the final phase. As a result of that interaction, his sister went on to get her degree in counseling, later became a counselor for the Veterans Administration.
Wow.
So him, his sister, and both of his parents, tremendous advocates for veteran courts.
I got to tell you, when we did that interview, it impacted me. It made me think about that, and that's when I volunteered to work with Judge Garcia. Because one of the big problems that we see and that we saw was not just alcohol or drug abuse, but they had financial problems as well. They had income problems as well. And you're addressing all of that. You're not just addressing the underlying psychological causes. You guys, in your treatment court are addressing financial issues, family issues, other issues as well, correct?
Well, once we get them well, I think some of those other issues are much easier for them to tackle because they're not clouded with the alcohol or the drugs or the other things that are over their heads.
Without a doubt. Judge
Yeah,
Collins.
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize for interrupting you.
Well, no, I was going to tell you that sometimes the reason why we even take some of the participants is so we can help their families. You know, their families need counseling, you know, whether it's parenting classes, whether it's sometimes safety planning, different things, you know, because there's a lot of stuff available for the significant others of the veterans, you know. We don't directly pay for it, but we know who will and who does.
And that's one thing that I have seen. One of the most valuable things that can be done for a lot of our veterans is by directing, and I say veterans, it's not limited to veterans, but directing them to the right services. But I wanted you to drill a little deeper, Your Honor. You were talking about the family. And when we think about this, we're talking about building an infrastructure for that individual. And it may take fixing the family that's on the outside so they're better able to support. Talk a little bit about the other thought that had crossed my mind is these are programs that are very much, this is not cookie cutter, very much individually tailored to what that particular, in our case we're talking veterans, but what that veteran needs. And would you talk a little bit about how you figure out, how do you unravel that jigsaw puzzle, if you will, or ravel it back up, however you would say that?
Well, when they apply to the program, there's tons and tons of paperwork and history that they're going to give, but they speak to our, she's an evaluator. They talk to her maybe about 3 hours, sometimes a couple of times, to get the whole story. What's eating you, basically, and your family, and figure out, okay, we need to get this guy, we need to give his wife this class, he needs parenting class, we need financial literacy, whatever they need. And we have centers like, you know, eQuest, the Vet Center, Cohen, service the families, because what's bothering our family bothers us.
Absolutely. So tell you what, let's do. Let's come back and finish up this conversation. We're going to hear from all of our partners right quick. You're listening to the Veterans Impact Show, and I'm Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran. Joining me, Chuck Wright, U.S. Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and we have two very, very special guests, the Honorable Judge Dominic Collins, head of the Veterans Court in Dallas County, and her able-bodied military peer, the one and only Scott Smith, a great friend of all of us in the veterans community. We'll be right back after these words, and we want to thank you for being part. Join us on Facebook. Join us on YouTube. Share this so that we can share it across the nation. We'll be right back. What the things that we're getting feedback when we do these programs, especially one as important as yours, Judge Collins, and how people will be inspired or how people will get in touch with us. We have had people call me from across the nation. A guy in Jacksonville, Florida, that called me. Lady in Richmond, Virginia, had a problem with her father, who was a World War II veteran, and we were able to find military peers. We were able to find the veterans, the accredited veterans rep, you're familiar with that were able to get them into the system and help them with the paperwork. Can you imagine a bedridden World War II veteran? You're going to have them fill out a mountain of paperwork? No. And there are people out there to help them. Just like Scott, you helped Judge Collins and her people to navigate this terribly difficult system. I deal with the federal government on everything I do with what I do, and paperwork. I'm beginning to think that they're forgetting about being eco-friendly because we're destroying forests left and right.
I think what I've learned over the last several years is I'm probably best at connecting people. If I haven't got the answer, I have learned a massive network of folks across the country that I can refer individuals to. I don't have all the answers.
That service is so incredibly valuable.
Well,
I need to know who to send them to.
Right.
When I had a problem with a family member, I was able to call Ginger, who connected me with an academy graduate, a West Point graduate, who helped out my family member into the mental health and alcohol court, and he's doing great. I think it's really important, and it's the connections, knowing who to call. And Scott, that is a value that is just really huge, and that's what we are doing with this program, is connecting the dots, and that's
Yes, sir.
important.
We actually go around the community and invite people to come to Veterans Court every Thursday at 2:00. Any person in the community to get connected with their services, their benefits. We have a Veterans Benefits Officer from the VA in the court every Thursday, and we have another person who does those kinds of things. And there's not civilians, but veterans in the community come in and get hooked up and start their benefits going.
Judge Collins, when we come back for this final segment, what I like to do is ask people how the military, and what you would say to a young man or young woman, especially a young lady, about going in the military. But before you do that, let's put a plug. Let's promote. If people come to your court on Thursday, they can connect with Scott. They can connect with members of the Military Peer Network. They can connect with, what do you have, the what is it, Texas Veterans Commission, the military deal, the guys that help people with
County Veteran Service
yes,
Officer
thank
Program.
Thank you.
So every county in Texas over a certain size has at least one County Veteran Service.
All right, here we go in a couple of seconds. We ready, guys?
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. Thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation and the Texas Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Now, let's continue this conversation.
Well, I got to tell you, this has got to be the fastest hour in the world when we do this, and there never seems to be enough time to get everything in. Judge Collins, we were talking on Facebook about your Thursday court at 2:00, that you have county veteran service officers, you have people like Scott Smith there, that veterans can come even if they're not involved in your court and find some team members to help them. Is that correct?
Sort of. We invite anyone to come down to the Frank Crowley Courts building, find my court. It's easy to find there at 2:00 every Thursday. I don't have veteran services, but I have the Veterans Benefits Officer, the guy from the actual VA, to help you.
Good.
Yeah, to help you complete your paperwork. Even there's another lady who help you get in the medical system, help you get doctor's appointments, whatever. I had a Marine friend who was a pilot, and he and everybody who worked with him were getting this particular kind of cancer. Came in there, helped him get doctor's appointments, helped him get his disability package started, everything. I mean, we're a service to the community, not just the veterans that are justice involved, but the whole community.
Scott, how can people get a hold of you? Because you are the great connector. We talked about that before.
I'm going to give you two email addresses. My county address is Scott, S-C-O-T-T, .V like Victor, .Smith, normal spelling, S-M-I-T-H, at dallascounty.org. I've got a personal email address that I think everybody in the world already has, a helpful peer at gmail.com. Personal cell phone number, 817-239-2636.
And people can connect with you if they want to be able to get connected with the Veterans Court or get connected with Judge Collins. Is that probably the best way to help manage, be the gatekeeper for that?
I'm going to give you one more telephone number, and it's going to be our Dallas Veteran Treatment Court Coordinator, Mr. Jerry Barker. Jerry's work telephone number is 214-653-5935.
Now, within this group of the four of us, we are all ex-military. We're all veterans. Two of us are Vietnam. Two of us are the Middle East.
Two of us are not exes.
Whatever. Oh, help me. What would you, Judge Collins, what would you say to a young woman, especially a young woman who's getting started in life, graduating from high school, maybe in college struggling like you did or like I did, and what would you say to them about a career start in the military?
I encourage them all to try it. You know, if you're not a lifer, still the work ethic that you get, the friends that you make, your battle buddies, whatever, and then the benefits that if you decide not to stay, that in 4 years you'll have those benefits with the education, the GI Bill. If you're in Texas, the Hazelwood, where after you exhaust your other benefits or you don't have them, 150 hours of college classes for free at a state school. My daughter's using mine for law school right now. You can pass it on to your spouse. Just the veterans benefits. There's tangible and intangible benefits. Just for me, I think it's the work ethic, learning how to work hard and that you can get through anything.
Scott, what would you say to a young man who's taking a look at the Marine Corps? What would you say to him or her?
I don't think they could pick a finer branch of service, but I also understand, having grown up in a Navy family, we all sign the same piece of paper, whatever service we choose. And every one of those services will cause us each to mature more quickly than we are willing to, I would say, and make us more disciplined and patient than I think the general population ever thought of being.
Well,
if I had it to do over again, I'd do it exactly the same way.
I totally agree. I think the biggest mistake that I made was I didn't know when I was a kid in high school about ROTC programs in college and scholarship programs. So I tell everybody, go talk to a recruiter, find out what's available to you. So I want to say thank you so much for being on board, and I want to close out with a prayer. So, dearest God in heaven, we thank you for this opportunity for us to be together. Please, thank you for blessing our active duty military, our reserves, our first responders, all of those who stand in the breach for us. All of the glory and honor belongs to you, Lord. We're grateful for that. We're grateful for our veterans. Bless them and guide them and protect them. Thank you. We pray in your holy name. Amen. Judge Collins, Scotty, thank you for being on board with us here for the Veterans Impact Show.